We're going to talk about the Vacheron Constantin Overseas today. This is my Grail watch. I have it on wrist. I'd like to do my review, and I've just got to let you guys know I'm still in the honeymoon phase with this watch. I wanted to wait to get out of the honeymoon so I could talk about it a little bit more rationally, to give myself a bit more credibility. But it's been 6 months, and I think I enjoy it more now than I did when I went and purchased it in Las Vegas in September of 2020. So we're going to go ahead and do the review. Just bear in mind, I'm a little bit biased, but I'm going to try to really show you the details. This video might go a little bit long, or at least longer than average, but I want to hit on all the aspects. I hope you guys enjoy this, and I will try to answer a few questions throughout this review, like what's it like meeting your hero, buying your Grail? Because, for all of us watch collectors, that is the pinnacle. That's what we strive for, what we would love to do one day, to actually purchase the Grail watch and put it on wrist. And how do you fare with it? Are you let down afterward? Do you get a new Grail watch? What's the process like, I guess? And so I'm going to try to answer those things. And let's start with the history of this model, because I place a lot of emphasis personally on design, but I think it's important. So this is a picture of the watch that the 3rd Gen Overseas is based off of. This debuted in 1977, which was the year that Star Wars: A New Hope hit theaters. And as you guys can see, it's definitely a play off of the AP Royal Oak that debuted 5 years previous in 1972. Obviously, not a ripoff, but you can tell the similar design idea. Vacheron Constantin was trying to capitalize on the wild success of the Audemars Piguet stainless steel luxury watch, the sport watch. So this is the VC222. It came out on the 222nd year anniversary of the company. It was powered by a JLC automatic movement that was nice and thin. And coincidentally, it was the same movement that was also in the Nautilus from Patek and in that Royal Oak from Audemars Piguet. It was designed by a man named Jörg Heisek, 37 millimeters in diameter, and Vacheron Constantin produced it until the mid-80s. Now, the brand went through some ownership changes. Eventually, it became part of the Richemont Group. And in 1996, the Gen 1 Overseas, with the name Overseas, debuted. Now, this one was also 37 millimeter and powered by a Girard-Perregaux automatic movement. And as you guys can see, this was the first generation that carried the Maltese cross inspiration when it comes to the bezel. It's not quite as close to the 222 in design language, but you guys can definitely see the similarities. And this one was produced until 2004. Now, from 2004 to 2016, we have the Gen 2 Overseas, which looks a lot more like what we see on my wrist today. So we still have the continuation of the Maltese cross bezel, but now we have the introduction of the half Maltese cross inspired bracelet that I think looks like $1 million. It's one of my favorites. A good bracelet is also something that I place a lot of emphasis and value in as a watch enthusiast. So I really do like this design. It's exquisitely finished. Now this watch was upsized. It's now 42 millimeters in diameter. And Vacheron Constantin went back to using a JLC automatic caliber for the movement within the watch. Now this movement was also shielded by a soft iron shell, also referred to as a Faraday shield, that directed magnetic flux around the movement and kept it anti-magnetic. So I think that's really interesting. But that brings us to 2016, where we have the introduction of the Gen 3 Overseas. And in my opinion, my very biased opinion, I think this is the best of the lot. Now I'm going to zoom in on the watch and show you guys this in a number of different lighting scenarios, from macro video to outside wrist rolls in the summertime, in the fall, here in winter as the snow's coming down. So you guys can see just how this looks outside of showroom lights, and hopefully it helps illustrate how beautiful, how sharp it is. And guys, please keep in mind, I'm in the honeymoon. This is my Grail watch, and so I'm going to be overly favorable, I think, and maybe less critical than I would if this was just another review on the channel, because this really means something to me. And but again, I will try my best to be fair here. I don't want this to just become a love fest because that's not interesting to watch. So anyways, let's continue with this. We have 41 millimeters of diameter with a 49 millimeter lug-to-lug length. 56.5 is the effective lug-to-lug length, just due to the integrated nature of the bracelet. But I will say that the bracelet does taper down. It has a nice flow to it. And my wrists are 7.25 inches just for reference. And so you guys can see this is exceptionally comfortable. It sits well. I think proportionally it looks good, but it does wear rather long in the lug-to-lug dimension. 11.2 in overall height, 23.5 millimeter width at the integrated lugs, and that tapers down to 20 millimeter at the signed butterfly style deployant. And let me share with you something that I really enjoy about this bracelet. I know butterfly style clasps don't get a lot of love in the watch enthusiast community, but on either side of the signed Maltese cross here, you can pull and engage a hidden extension system that will give you 2 millimeters of travel, and that's found on both sides of the clasp. And so, if you're wearing this in the summer, you're really active, your wrist swells up a little bit, it takes, 2 seconds and you can extend it to get the fit that you're looking for. And I think that's a really ingenious detail and one that I appreciate. Now let's look at the dial. The dial is the star of the show when it comes to this color variation. I don't want to say it is the best blue dial out there. I don't have the authority to make that type of statement. I haven't had experience with a lot of the blue dials that are consistently ranked as among the top or the best in the industry, but this one has got to be up there. It is absolutely outstanding. It's mesmerizing. And you guys can see this is a lacquered reflective execution. So on some of these macro shots, you really can see the reflections. You can see the gloss finish. It looks very beautiful, but there's also a hint of the sunray grain as well. And that becomes more apparent in natural light, especially here in the summertime where I'm just getting these just beautiful bright flashes of bright, vivid, saturated blue. It's so nice. But we also get hints of other colors as well. So depending on the light situation that you're in, you get a good range, anything from borderline purple or indigo to a dark blue to navy, even black in some instances. So it's very dynamic when it comes to the range, when it comes to the lacquered reflective nature paired with the sunray grain. And if you guys take a look at the index ring along the circumference of the dial, you guys can see it carries almost an electric effect. It's more bright and vivid and light catching, and I think it's exceptional. So I got to calm down here. The dial is so much fun, guys. It really is the star of the show here. It's a great backdrop for the white gold applied logo, the Maltese cross below the 12 o'clock position, the white gold handset, which is very substantial. Notice how long the seconds hand is with the pointer tip and then the large counterbalance weight at the opposite side. That's nice to see. And we also have a white gold date frame and white gold applied markers. Notice how sharp and clean the bevel work is when it comes to these applied markers. The high polish finish, it does dazzle. And in certain lights, you get a lot of reflections coming off of those applied markers. And so it's just adding to the level of how dynamic this watch is in different light scenarios. The white gold markers are filled with Superluminova BGW9, and I will admit it's not a very thick application. It's very easy and it is legible in low light, but it doesn't have great longevity, and I would not say that the lume is the strong point of this watch. Now let's take a look at the movement. This is the VC 5100 caliber. It does carry the hallmark of Geneva certification. This is certified by Time Lab, and as you guys can see, it is just absolutely beautiful. Great movement architecture, and I will note that this is the first time that an Overseas has carried an in-house Vacheron Constantin movement. Previously, they've only been GLC and Girard-Perregaux calibers. We have 172 components, 37 joules, 60 hours of power reserve, and a beat frequency of 4 Hertz or 28,800 beats per hour. It is adjusted in 5 different positions and carries a 22 karat gold engraved rotor, which you guys can see just a high level of detail and just beautiful craftsmanship when it comes to the different finishes. Now, it does obscure about half of the caliber at any given time, which the caliber just, it's classically finished. Beautiful with the Geneva striping that is exceptionally crisp and clean. We have engine turn perlage work, micro perlage work. We have high polish englage found throughout the chamfered edges of the plates and around the jewels. We also have black polished screws as opposed to thermally blued screws, which I think is interesting. And I like the dynamic here. The impressive thing is everything is hand finished, hand assembled, hand regulated, and they've just done such a great job with this. And I will say this is the easiest movement that I've ever filmed. It just looks good no matter what no matter what the lens distance is or the light that I'm in. It's just a beautiful movement. So it looks really good here, and I think it looks even better in person if that's possible. Now, I want to bring your attention back to the Gen 2 Overseas that carried the JLC caliber. That one had a Faraday shield, a soft iron cage around the movement to direct magnetic flux around the caliber. What we have here in the Gen 3 is a similar concept. It's not a full Faraday shield, but we do have a soft nickel iron alloy movement ring that directs the magnetic flux around the movement. Not to the degree that a full Faraday shield would do, but definitely an adequate level. So this will be anti-magnetic to 25,000 amperes per meter, or translated to Gauss, that is 313.5, or far more than you would ever encounter in everyday situations. So I love the fact that this did continue with the anti-magnetic tradition, but we went in-house for the first time on an Overseas, and we can now look at the movement. None of the previous generations had exhibition case backs. And this is an in-house caliber that certainly is worthy of spending some time and admiring the details, the hallmark of Geneva certification and all that entails. And I'm just really, really impressed with what's going on here. Now, how is it in terms of accuracy, and what's it like in an everyday situation? I will say that occasionally, as I'm wearing this watch, I can feel that hefty gold winding mass spinning around on those ceramic ball bearings. It is absolutely nothing like a Miyota wobble or a Valjoux wobble. You can barely feel it at some times, just because that's a significant amount of precious metal in the movement. And I like the fact that it does carry some intrinsic value. It's more than just the white gold markers, hands, and logo on the flip side of the watch. And so, yeah, just occasionally you can feel that winding mass spinning around. But again, nothing like the wobble of any of those other two previously mentioned calibers. And when it comes to accuracy, this one is spot on. I'm getting plus 0.5 seconds per day when I throw it on the time grapher. And so it's just very accurate. I think maybe 2 or 3 times since I purchased this, I've had to adjust the time. It is just rock solid, high amplitude, 0 beat error, 0 complaints from me. Now let's zoom out and take a look at the watch as a whole. And I'd like to talk about the bracelet real quick, because I value a bracelet probably more than the average watch enthusiast. It's always my preference when there is a good bracelet option. That's what I enjoy wearing a watch on, and this is excellent. I won't say it is the best. I think if I had to classify one best bracelet out there, it would probably be the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. That thing is just, when it comes to how bulletproof it is, its design, and the level of light play, I think that takes the top spot, But this one's not far behind. I love the taper here. I love the fact that every one of the links are removable. There's screw pin connectors in between each one of the links. They're hand finish. There is a great amount of light play. It's very dynamic. And I do enjoy the fact that Vacheron Constantin kept the half Maltese cross design when it comes to how these links interlock. In fact, the high polished flank there, it almost makes it look like these are a dovetail fitment, which is not the case. But again, it's so nice. And as you do a wrist roll, you get light play off of the bezel, obviously off of the white gold markers, hands, and dial. but the bracelet I think is fitting with the rest of the watch. And if you look at the case, you guys can see a flared, high polished chamfer. There are no hot spots on this watch. It's just completely just well finished throughout. And I will note, not only the movement carries the hallmark of Geneva certification, we also have the stamp here in the case and bracelet. And again, I think that adds a little bit of value to the piece. Now, I will say I might sound a bit obtuse saying that this is a value aspect. You know, anytime you're spending $20,000 on a watch, which for me is by far the most I've ever spent on one piece, it's a little ridiculous that I would even want to spend that much on one watch that tells you the time, you know, to a greater degree of inaccuracy than the phone in your pocket. But this is a luxury item. And as far as luxury items go, I do think this does carry a little bit more value than some of the other aspects, partly due to the Geneva certifications here, but also due to a few other things. And so let's take a look at the box and its extras. This is one of the things that I enjoy about the Overseas is the fact that we get 2 additional straps. So there is a quick release system here on the underside of the bracelet where you can easily lift off the bracelet and put it on a texturized rubber with a high polished deployant here that does carry the Maltese cross design again in the deployant. And I do enjoy wearing it on the rubber strap. And I will say when I first got this watch, it was on bracelet all the time. And I took it off just to see what the other options would look like, but they quickly got changed back to the bracelet. But over the past 5 or so months, I've really come to appreciate the rubber. And so I have to say I'm probably wearing it on bracelet 95% of the time, and like 4.5% of the time it's on the rubber because the rubber is very comfortable and it does change the look and feel up a little bit. And I like the fact that this is sporty, that I could take this in water. You know, I can completely submerge this. It's got a screw down crown, 150 meters of water resistance. It's anti-magnetic. Again, it's completely waterproof. So I do enjoy that, but we also have an included alligator strap, which I've worn 0.5% of the time. This is my dedicated dress watch in my small core collection of 4 pieces. And I don't dress up very often. I'm, in shorts and a t-shirt most days, most hours of the day. So I don't have to dress up very much, but occasionally when I do, I will put this on the navy alligator strap. And I think that does add a level of refinement and it can pull respectable duty as a dress piece. But I do recognize also that at some future point, I would like a dedicated dress watch, that's not actually a sport watch that makes do as a dress watch, but is it a dress watch at heart. Now, looking at the rest of the included things with your purchase, we have a lovely wood presentation box with a high gloss lacquered finish, kind of similar to the vivid blue nature of the dial when it comes to how much light play there is. So this will be a fingerprint and smudge magnet, but when you buy a watch at this level, at this price, you want a really nice presentation box, as silly as that sounds, because it's part of the experience. And I compare this to, say, a Rolex box, which is just molded green plastic and that generally sell for half of the price of one of these stainless steel Overseas. And you really see that Rolex is pulling one over on its consumers. The boxes just aren't that great when you compare it to a really nicely crafted box like this. I think it's impressive, but honestly, it basically just sits in the closet because the watch is either being worn on wrist. It's not sitting in this presentation box. When it's not on wrist, it's either in the safe, it's at the bank, or it's in my watch box on my desk. And so, I think the extras here, I don't really utilize. They kind of just sit in the closet, but it's part of the package. It's part of the experience of buying a Grail watch. Now let's talk about some negative elements here. I don't want this to be a complete love fest on this watch, even though I completely love everything about it. Let's talk about a few things. The big one is this movement does not hack. And that might be crazy sounding to some of you who might be incredulous at the fact that this does not hack and your 5KX Seiko hacks, or your Orient, or your whatever watch you're wearing that's affordable. But when it comes to this level of watch, really timing something to the second is just not a priority. It's all about the hand finishing, about the accuracy, about the components, and the general beauty of the finish and the movement architecture. And, hacking the balance is just not something that's a priority on this type of watch. Now, I do recognize some high-end watches like the Royal Oak, the latest caliber, does have the hacking feature, but generally Patek, Vacheron Constantin, a lot of Audemars Piguet, they don't hack. And those of you that are familiar with high horology pieces will recognize this is not really an issue. But then again, guys, I'm in the honeymoon. I might be justifying the negative aspects, and it might sound that way. But then again, a watch at this level is already so strong. And any perceived negative elements, I think, come down to personal preference because, again, the design has been fleshed out. We're talking about production and execution at the highest levels. And so really the negative elements, they're a little bit personal preference. They may be a little nitpicky, but I will mention this movement does not have hacking. Now, one thing that I think maybe could be improved is the clarity on the crystal. I think this was an intentional design decision on Vacheron Constantin's part by wanting to introduce another layer of reflectivity in light play, pop, and presence. And so in some lights, you guys can really see the reflections. I think it could be better if we had excellent layers of anti-reflective treatment to really see this gorgeous lacquered, reflective dial to a higher degree of clarity. I do think that could be an improvement. Now, another note we touched on earlier is the fact that the date wheel is white. And some people might think it should be blued. I don't think so. I think it visually balances out the cardinal markers when it comes to the white space. I don't see any issues from a design perspective, but it is rather bland and rather boring if you want to refer to it in that type of way. And then the last thing I think could be considered a negative element is the availability of the blue dial. You go to a boutique, you go to an authorized dealer, and you could relatively easily find a black dial or a silver dial, an ivory dial, but the blue is the one that everybody wants. And I recognize that I had a pretty short wait. I waited about a month and a half to get mine brand new from the boutique down in Las Vegas. And I want to thank Karan. If you're watching this, Karan, I'm so much in love with this watch you sold me. So thank you very much. But I do recognize this is becoming a harder to source watch. Not at the same level, obviously, as a Nautilus or a 15202 or something like that. But it is harder to come by. And I think in future years that will only be exaggerated. Now let's wrap up this video. I know I've gone kind of long here. Thank you if you're still here. I really appreciate that. But I will say regarding the Overseas and regarding if this is your Grail watch, do not buy this watch. Do not come close to this watch if you're trying to scratch a Royal Oak or a Nautilus itch, because this watch is nothing like those other two pieces outside of the concept of an integrated luxury high horology stainless steel sports piece with a very beautiful blue dial color option. So really, if you want an AP, buy an AP. If you want a Patek, buy a Patek if you can. I don't believe in substitutes, especially at the Grail level. So if you're just hoping to get something that's a little bit more available and a little bit more affordable than those other two watches, I don't think you'll find lasting happiness with this piece. But that being said, if you love this Gen 3 on its own merits, you love the size, you love the Maltese cross design, you love the dial, you love the movement, its details, you love the hallmark of Geneva certification, you love the fact that you get extra bracelets and everything that this watch is, if you identify with that, if you love the merits of the Overseas, the Gen 3 Overseas, I think you will love this watch just like I love and adore this watch. This is my Grail piece. And to answer the question from the beginning, have I fallen out of love? No, absolutely not. My love and appreciation for this watch has only grown over the months. and I would anticipate it to only grow in future months and years. This really is a special piece, and the detail work, the clarity, the sharpness, the crispness, the comfort, it's all here. And I'm just so happy. So yeah, I did meet my hero, and it's just been a wonderful experience. I'm not tired of it. I'm not going to be flipping this watch anytime soon. And I do say in all of my personal watch reviews, I don't have keepers. I don't have sacred cows. I might not keep this watch, but I have absolutely no plans on letting go of this lovely piece. And it has appreciated in value since I've purchased it. Part of that has come in from the fact that we had an 8% retail price increase just a couple weeks after I secured this watch. And so, part of the price increase or the valuation increase has just come from the retail price going up. But I think the longer that this watch is popular and hard to come by at retail, it will continue to appreciate, which is not a reason to own a watch. Really, if you have money that you want to multiply into more money, you should get into stocks. You should do something else. You shouldn't be trying to invest in silly luxury items like watches. But it is a nice feature to know that if I needed to or wanted to move on from this watch, I would get more than what I paid for, which, it's always a good thing, never to lose money, I guess. But this watch is not about the money for me. This is about the lovely design, the way it makes me feel, the emotional connection that I have. This is not a logical purchase for me. This was an emotional purchase for me. And that's what I think Grail watches should be. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed my kind of rambling review. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. I will be featuring this Overseas in future videos. So if there's something you want me to talk about or expound on, let me know. You can put a comment here in the comment section. You can send me a private email if you wish. Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a great evening, and I'll see you next time.